Hi, welcome back. I am Abhishek. In today's session, I am going to discuss about the concept of association. So, what exactly an association? So, association defined as how one table is interlinked with other table. That is an association. Basically, relationship between the tables. So, when I say the relationship between tables, it basically a relationship between its record is exactly at one record of table is how interlinked with another record of tables or table. So it can be defined as one-to-one, where one record of one table is exactly interlinked with one record of another table. That is in one-to-one. So as an example, you can understand as, so there is a student entity and there is an address entity. So we have student table and address table. So inside the student table, you are storing student related details, whereas in address table, you are storing uh, address related details. So let's say I am the student Abhishek. I can have only one address. So Abhishek record is directly linked to one record of address table that is in one-to-one relation. Now let's understand one-to-many or many-to-one. You can understand as one record of table is how interlinked with another record of another table. Basically, you take a one record from one table and it will be linked to the many record of another table. That is one-to-one, one-to-many. We will discuss one-to-many, many-to-one, many-to-many in separate videos. So in today's video, I am just want to cover as one-to-one. We'll see how we can do in action. We'll write some code for that, and we'll try to save that data in our database. Now let's understand many-to-many. Basically, many record of one table is how interlinked with many records of another table. That is an many-to-many. We will see all this in action. So in today's video, I am targeting only one-to-one. So here I will take as an student and address entity, and we will perform one-to-one relation. So let's see in action. So let me run this project. I will open my Postman also. So this project is getting started. So inside the student, we can see we have a name, email. So basically, to create a student, we need to pass as a name and email. So as a one-to-one relation, we are going to link this student as an address entity also. That's what we are going to do in this video. It's getting started. Let me select the workspace. I think project is started. Let me hit this. Yep. So you see, if this find all method is returning exactly one student. Right? I hit the student. Yeah, we can see one student. Now in this student entity, we want to have one address field also, and that address will be linked to student as a one-to-one relation. So let's see how we can implement. So before going ahead, I noticed that inside in our database there is one more table is getting created called hibernate sequence. If you see, it's basically capturing the next sequence what it could be. Like right now in our student, its ID is 2, so it is capturing as a next sequence is 2. So when you create a new student record, it will use that ID from there. So if you didn't get, let me let's take Mukesh. So if I hit now, you see ID is 2 is generated. If I do refresh, it is 2. In hibernate sequence, it will be next entity will be 3. So it will use from this, and it will use here. So basically I don't want this behavior to be created an extra hibernate sequence table. So I just want to get rid from this behavior. So why it is coming, if you notice in our student table, we have kept a strategy as auto. That's why it is following as this behavior. We want to alter this now. I will choose as identity. So inside the identity, it will generate, it will be kind of auto increment. In this case, there will be no extra table for that. So let me drop this table, close all. Let's restart our application. Okay, the project is started. Now if we refresh our table, you see we got only one table and there is no hibernate sequence table here because we have altered that behavior. Now if I insert here data, you see ID is one generated. I will take as another example Mukesh Kumar. I will keep it Mukesh 1. See, ID is 2 generated. If I refresh the database, now there is no extra table called hibernate sequence. So we have successfully altered that. Now let's start implementing as a new entity called address, and we'll see how we can link that one-to-one relation. So first and foremost thing, I'm going to create a new entity as our class, name as address, and inside the address I will take int as a ID. It's primary key basically. Next I'm going to take as string street. Next I'm interested in string landmark. String, I'm interested in city. Next it could be string state. Next it could be string, or let's take it int bean code. Okay, now this is our another entity. I want to annotate with entity and it should come from Java X persistence. Next it should be an ID so that it will mark as a primary key, and it could be another as auto increment. So I will interested in generated value, and here I will take a strategy generated type identity. Okay, I guess that is, and let's generate a constructor for this. I will want to use ID, and I need getter setter. I will use lambok, data from lambok, and I need no ask constructor, right? So far what we have did, we just created an address entity as a Java class and annotated with entity so that JPA will translate into the tables, and it's this translated will be as columns. So first field I have taken as ID, where ID I marked as a primary key, and it is strategy I kept like auto increment. These are the field I need in order to define the address. Next I have created the constructor, and by using this data, it will generate a getter setter for this field, and it no ask constructor will generate a no argument constructor for this class. So far so good. Now here we have student entity which we have created in earlier lessons while building the REST API. Now I want like a student to be have one-to-one relationship with the address. So let's define a address field here, because this we are going to annotate with one-to-one. So from here we have basically started the procedure for defining one-to-one relation with student to address. So I will mark as one-to-one. Now the next thing is where you want to keep a foreign key. Either you want to maintain a foreign key of address table in here, or you want to mark in student foreign key table here. So that is called owning side of foreign key. So for that you need to use join column. Right. So what join column is this? Where you want to define the foreign key. So we have decided we want to keep a foreign key of address, basically foreign key of address table in our student. So here you need to mark as name and define the foreign key of field name. I am interested in address ID. So far so good. So what we have did, we have created an address entity, and next we are establishing a one-to-one relation. Basically one student can have a one address. So now when we are defining as a one-to-one relation, there you need to define the foreign key where you want to keep. You want to keep in address student table. So if you are keeping in student table, so this is called an owning side of foreign key. That is the concept I have explained. Now I think we are good here. Now let's restart, and you will see that one foreign key will be added in our table. So if you want to see the log, so here you will see something alter student table, and it's adding a foreign key. I think, yeah, it will generate here in log. You see filter table, some foreign key constant, reference address ID, right? So if I refresh this table now, and if I go student, you see, why do earlier we don't have an address ID, so it took as a null. So what we will do, we will delete this record for a while, and then we will insert. Now it's created another table called address, and here you see whatever the field we have defined our entity class, it is directly mapped to the address entity. Now we are good. So next we want interested in to create a repository for the address, because we have created an entity. So let's create an interface called address repository, right? And again we will extend this to JPA repository, extends to JPA repository, and here you need to define the domain class. Our domain class is address, and the next parameter will be what's your primary key type. It is an integer type. That's it. Now we are good. So while defining in a student, we can define this address entity also. So let's see in action. So let me refresh one more time. Okay. Now in our address, we need to define this many things. So while defining a student, I also want to create its address. I want to link directly here its address. So inside the address, I'm interested in what are the fields? Street. So I will define a street. I will take as any random example. Let's say e-city, street, landmark. Next is landmark. I will take as ECT. I'm just giving a random. It's weird. No problem. Just to fill the data. Next city. I will give is Bangalore because I am staying in Bangalore. Next state can keep is Karnataka. Right? Now pin code, I'm just giving any random. I think pin code C capital. So let me keep the same. I'm just taking in a random, let's say 50001. It is not correct. Okay. So far what we have defined, we have defined an address entity, and one student can have exactly one address, right? So that's what we are interested to insert address directly while creating the student. Now let's see. I guess it may lead to failure, but let's hit the send button. Yeah, it is expected. Internal server error, no problem. So we'll see what's the error. Yeah, so this is pretty much clear object reference and plus. So what this error is telling, this is Spring Boot address. So what this error is telling to us, while creating a student entity, you are also creating an address also. Basically, this detail will go in a student table, while this address details, it will go in address table. So from one entity, you are trying to create two entities, basically a parent and child. So by default, this behavior is disabled. I mean, while creating a student, you can't save address as another entity details in one go. So default behavior is like, first you create address entity, take the primary key there, then you store into the student table. But we are not interested in that way. We can do that way also, but we are not interested in that. We just want to create in one go only. So for that, you need to tell a hibernate of such behavior. So such behavior is called cascade. I think it will come here. Yeah, cascade. And so I will take a cascade type all. So why cascade type all? If you go to cascade type all, it says what are the cascade operation? Persist, merge, remove, refresh, detach. So basically we are interested in persist, and merge, remove, it will see will later. Persist means you will save the data. Okay, so now we have enabled this cascade to all. So means it's telling to hibernate while creating a student entity, you create an address also if it is coming. So let's refresh now, and we will see this behavior. It started. So for now, if I refresh student, there is no data. If I refresh address, there is no data. Okay, so our project is up and running now. We are hitting student entity, and from a student entity it should create the address also, and it should link with its primary key, basically foreign key relation also. Let's hit now. You see, we got 201 created, and this is the ID 4. Okay, now you see inside the student, we are getting address entity also. as ID1, and what are the value we passed? It's coming here. Now if I refresh address, you see address detail came in the table, and the student also saved, and it's a foreign key. Basically this is the primary key of address table, and this is the foreign key relation. This is one-to-one mapping, right? So if I hit now, like let's say I'm interested in to get the students, you see in the student we are getting the address also. So this is the one-to-one mapping. So if I create a different student, let's say I will create an Abhishek, and I will take name as Abhishek. I stay in, let's say, ECT Street 2 and ECT 2, and pin code is the 13. So basically each student can have a different address, right? So let's hit now. You see it's created, and if I go to database, you see this student with ID 4, it's linked to address ID 1. Now this address ID 5, it is linked to address ID 2. So if I refresh the address table, you see we have, by the same, just creating in the student entity, it's also creating the address. This is the behavior what we expected. So this is the guys one-to-one relation. So what we have did, we just created an address entity, and previously we have student entity. Here we have defined one-to-one relation to the address, and we have just marked as a join column to define where the owning side of the foreign key. So this is simple way of mapping of one-to-one relation. So in the next video we will discuss more about this regarding bidirectional, and what is the issue is it is there in bidirectional mapping. So if you have any doubt in this video or any other video, please let us know in the comment section. I will try to address those.